What's up, everyone? It's Nick from Team Nitro YGO here, and today I am returning with a Virtual World deck profile for the November-December 2021 format. I've just been a little out of touch with Yu-Gi-Oh! As of late, since Magic's been eating up a lot of my time. There hasn't really been a deck that I've been interested in until I revisited Virtual World, just took the deck to the drawing board. This is what I came up with. I've got a couple of decent runs at some remote duel local so far. I think I'm like 12-3 in 3 events with the deck so far. The deck still feels very, very powerful, especially like if you know what you're doing and you can play it properly, you can just get wins against everything. But anyways, as always, if you just want the deck list, it's going to be in the description of this video, but if you want to stick around for some in-depth talk and theory, I'd be more than willing to oblige you today. So let's just hop right into the main deck. So the main deck hasn't changed too much in terms of actual Virtual World cards. Like, it's still pretty much the same it's always been. So the 3 Lulu, 3 Lao Lao, 3 Gigi, 3 Lili, 2 Nian, pretty standard stuff. I was playing one of this card for a while because I wasn't playing Desires, but now that I'm back on Desires, you need to play 2 of it because this card just like really helps your grind game, and it gives you access to extenders through multiple points and combo lines. And then I'm playing the worst card in the deck too. So I needed to get the deck. I needed to get the deck to 40, and it's also just another name. Like, drawing it sucks. Don't get me wrong. Like, you always want to send this card off of like Kieran or Lao Lao when you need an extender. But it does come up sometimes. It's also just like another normal summon too. It's a great way to bait interaction because it's a normal summon that can bring itself back through like pretty little effort. So like you can normal summon 2/2. Say like activate Kieran, the Kieran gets interacted with, and later in the turn you can bring back the 2/2 by pitching the Kieran. So you actually get a lot of utility out of this card. But it is pretty bad. Like, it's only here to be a name and like to extend in very specific combo lines. But if you wanted to cut it, I wouldn't blame you. And then moving on to the interactive cards, as you'll see, I'm not playing hand traps. We'll talk about that in a second. I'm just playing the 3 Forbidden Chalice and the 3 Infinite Impermanence as my interactive cards. This has been a point of contention, just as of late in general, is do you play hand traps or board breaking cards? And I think I'm on the team of board breaking cards right now. So here's the thing with hand traps, is like, every single deck has enough extenders to the point where playing the hand traps just doesn't do a lot. The only decks that I want the hand traps for are like all-in combo decks that their end board is so big that your board breaking cards don't matter, or I want hand traps against fair decks with choke points, and neither of those are particularly good in the metagame right now. Like, I would rather just play the cards that interact with the key end bosses and then have my engine take care of it for me, because the VW cards are just like good going second. You can make Zeus, you can make M7, you can fan away cards. Like, your engine going second is still very good, so you don't need to play a ton of cards that like help you going second. You just need to make sure you interact with like the big end bosses that negate all your cards. So like negating Baron's important, negating Shishao's important, negating even the Chen or whatever it's called, the like level 10 that like reduces attack is important. Like, obviously this is bad against like exactly Bird Up and Drytron. Like, those are the 2 decks where you want a bunch of hand traps. But again, those 2 decks aren't really like putting up a lot of numbers right now. Like, these are much better against like Tenyi, Sword Soul, the Mirror, Dragon, just like anything that you're worried about from that perspective. So that's why I'm playing these right now. It also lets you play more consistency cards to make sure that your deck doesn't brick. Or at least bricks less often. Because that's the thing with the hand traps. Like, if you play too many of them, they're bricks. So, because you don't want to draw too many hand traps. So that does it for the monsters and the defensive cards. Moving on to the Virtual World cards. 3 Kowloon and 3 Qinglong. Not much more to say about that. This card's also insane going second because it gets you Qinglong, and then Qinglong is a monster negate. And then if you get it to the graveyard or they negate it with whatever, then you get to search, which is super good. Lets you filter through your deck. And 3 Desires. This deck has a card advantage problem, so you want to make sure to recoup those cards. And then this is probably the worst card in the deck, 2 Foolish Burial Goods. Because I'm not playing hand traps, you can't play Small World. Your Small World pool is actually pretty deep with the Virtual World cards themselves. So I don't want to play Small World unless I'm playing a bunch of hand traps, and I think hand traps are bad. So I'm playing 2 goods and an upstart, just to make sure that I can see Virtual World cards every game. And also, like, this card's still fine because it gives you versatility in your spell and traps. So like, if you already have access to Qinglong, you can get Chuche or Zhuanwu access. Or if you already have access to the trap, this gives you access to the spell, which lets you send a monster. It's also just a good discard when you're already playing. Like, just playing 39 cards is good. Like, I'm finally happy I can play a deck with upstart. I love playing 39 card decks. So good. And then for like the extenders / other interactive cards, Double Emergency Teleport. This card's crazy, getting Lulu out of deck, getting Nian out of deck. Not once per turn, so if you draw both, you can activate both in the same turn. The Call by the Grave, why the fuck is this card still legal? I don't know. Like, this thing is so broken, lets you push through any hand trap, basically. Another thing to play the board breaking cards is that like cards like this and Tactics get worse the less hand traps are in the format. Like obviously they're still good cards. They're just not very good when people aren't playing hand traps. So if you're not playing hand traps, then you can't really get hit with like Call by the Grave and stuff. And then Reborn. This is just a super good extender. It also helps you push for game. Like I've had a lot of games just stolen off of like reborning my opponent's Baron and then Baron negating their Nibiru. Like you just get a ton of percentage points by doing things like that. And again, it's also another name, so you can like bring back your monster. You can bring back your name to have something to summon, to like activate a hand effect. But most of the time this gets stuff out of my opponent's graveyard. But like you do get the flexibility of targeting your own stuff with this, which is good. It's also just like an insane card. Like any combo deck that can play this card probably should. Like it's kind of cracked. And then for the virtual world traps, just the 2 Chuche and the 1 Zhuanwu. You don't need any more than this. Pretty much said all there is to be said about this. This card actually comes up a ton now because certain combo lines, like if you can hit the Verte, then you stop the DPE, which is actually kind of crazy. Because it means that like if you're going first and they try to like go for Verte DP your board, this hits the Verte on summon and you just like get a ton of points out of that. So that does it for the main deck. It's 40 cards. Not much to... Like I said, I don't think too much has changed. I think the philosophy of Virtual World's the same. It's more so just like, in this specific format, I don't want hand traps. I'm trying to play as many cards as possible to let me play the game. You can play Prosperity if you wanted. Prosperity I think is kind of weak though, unless your hand's already functioning. So you have to look for specifically what you want. For the extra deck, we have the 1 Charge Warrior and the 1 Juju. I'm not playing Coral Dragon anymore, because the fact that it's a tuner is actually more of a detriment than it is an upside. Obviously, in certain hands, it being a tuner is good because it lets you go for Zulkin. But you can just like usually manage your resources in a way to get to the Zulkin anyway. And Chuche helps with that too. Like Lulu plus Kieran is just a Zulkin by itself because you can banish the Chuche that you send off Kieran to make the Lulu level 6. So Coral just like hasn't come up as of late, and I just wanted to play other better cards in the extra deck. And then for the 9s, just Mech and Shen Shen. Again, I don't think you need to play the bad ones. You can just play the good ones. Like, this card being removal is good to get you back a tuner. Shen Shen just comes back every turn. This card's just, like, really, really hard to out unless they, like, Like, they have to banish it out of your graveyard on, like, their turn. And if they can't, then, like, you get to bring it back on your turn, which is kind of crazy. But the funny thing is, like, even if they banish it, you can just Nian it back to your extra deck. Because I was playing against Shadal and they did that to me. They aerialed my graveyard and then I went E-Telly for Nian, normal Lulu, make Juju, Juju effect, send your back row, put my Shen Shen back, and then was able to make the Shen Shen on the next turn. So that was actually kind of crazy. That's it for the synchros, or at least those synchros, none of these sea monsters. Just Break Sword is the only rank 3. Like, Gossip Shadow sucks because it gives your opponent a card. Fortune Tune sucks because it doesn't do anything. This card is removal, and it makes Zeus. Like, it's exactly what you want in this deck. Fan's cracked. M7's the best card ever printed. Like, like this is the whole reason I love playing this deck. Just this card right here. Like, you haven't lived until you M7 pick up a Nibiru against your combo opponent. It's so good. Like, it gets you back resources. It gets you back the Floodgate hand traps, which we'll talk about when we get into the side deck. This card's just so good. One of the cards that I cut Coral for is Utopia Beyond. I'm surprised I wasn't playing this card sooner. This thing's actually kind of cracked. Helps you push for game by making stuff 0 and you can just attack over things. It also lets you make a 4 material Zeus because you don't have to detach. The Gaia Dragon for the Zeus. Also, it's a dragon, so in exactly one combo line with Lulu, this is the fusion material for Dragoon. And then the best sea monster in the game, Divine Arsenal Zeus. This card's broken. And then the rest of the extra deck is the Zulkin package. So Zulkin and Crystal Wing, that's pretty standard. And then I am all in on Muddy Mud Dragon with Invoke, Caliga, and Dragoon. I apologize, I don't own a Dragoon. I sold mine a while ago, and I just haven't been able to pick one up. But my teammates have been gracious enough to let me borrow one for tournaments. So shout out to Jacob, shout out to Austin. You two are great people. Anyway. I think this package is insane. I think that it gives the deck exactly what it was looking for, which is an oppressive end board that doesn't require a lot of resources. And these cards just, like, they don't hinder you from playing in any capacity. Like, I know Caliga's symmetrical, but you can just out this by Tribute Summoning on your turn, or Chuche popping it when it gets annoying. And, like, you can, this is just, the thing is, you can end on these even if this gets interacted with. So if you make the Zulkin and it gets impermed, you can still make Muddy and then end on one of these and still have 2 cards in hand. So you're able to play the game on the next turn. And then, like, Dragoon's a card, some decks just literally cannot out it in any capacity. Like, you make it against, like, Sky Striker, they have next to no out. You make it against Eldritch, they have next to no out. Like, against control decks, that's how you break them. Like, not only, like, your control matchup's already good, but sometimes they do draw, like, the relevant traps like Torrential and Strike against you, and your deck just, like, fizzles for a bit. But if you get to stick the Dragoon going first, even going second sometimes, because you can make them use their back row awkwardly, then you just win the game for free. So I think playing these cards is super important. Obviously, like, if you can't afford it or don't want to play this card, you don't have to. I just think that in this specific format right now, where games go long and decks pieces of interaction aren't, they're all really destruction based in addition to negation. The only one that isn't is Robin, that bounces all your cards. This card's busted. So that does it for the extra deck. Moving on to the side deck. The side deck really has not changed that much since the last time I profiled this deck. 3 Droll for Drytron, Adignister, Flunder. Certain other rogue decks lose to this card pretty hard. And again, like, the way that you can break the combo matchups is picking stuff like this up with M7. Like, that's how I beat Flunder in a remote regional, was I went M7, pick up my Droll, so I ended on Shen, M7, Chuche live, and then just, like, ended the game for them. 3 Lancia, this is for Tenyi, Sword Soul, the Mirror, Phantom Knight, any rogue decks. Triple Nibiru. This card seems kind of bad. Like, every deck ends on negation before 5 summons, but some decks just, like, can't end on negates. So, like, I board this in the Mirror if they don't go for Zulkin right away. I board this in against Phantom Knight because they usually don't end on Appaloosa. Even against Drytron, you can board this in to interact with them. And again, the way that you can break the combo matchups is you draw one of these, which is a little bit RNG, but they are 3-ofs. You're about 35% to open any given 3-of in your deck. So you draw one of these, you impactfully interact with them, and then you just force through M7 to get it back. Or, like, really the best way to use it is you go back and forth for a bit because both decks are really good at interacting with each other, and then you run them out of resources, and then you go, okay, M7, get back my, M7, get back my Nib, or M7, get back my Droll, and that just shuts them out of the game. So that's why I like the like, even M7, like, picking up Ash and Bell and stuff is still insane, don't get me wrong, but it's a lot better when you pick up these high impact hand traps that end the turn, because it means that you basically just get to play 2 turns for free. And the 3 Twin Twister for backer removal. These could be Cosmics. I just like Twin right now. I want to be able to hit, like, even though it's a 2-for-2 and this deck has a card advantage problem, you want to be able to interact with multiple cards at once. They could even be Lightning Storms, but Lightning Storm's bad when you're playing, whereas this is good pretty much anytime as long as you have the card to discard. Or it could even be, or if you wanted to cut one of these for a Feather Duster, you could do that. Like, there's not really a right or wrong way to do it. And then I think the best side deck card in Yu-Gi-Oh! 3 Solemn Judgment. This card is insane. Not only does it interact with the board-breaking cards that everyone's playing, the Dark Ruler, the Droplet, the Impermanences, even Mystic Mine, it interacts with their engine. So if they don't draw board-breaking cards against you, or you build your board to play around board-breaking cards, you just Judgment like the normal, and they just have to pass. Like, even this deck, like, I've had games where I go to, like, make an M7, they'll Judgment my M7, and I have to pass. Like, this card is just so impactful. Like, I think in a lot of combo decks, I would side this. Even in control decks, I would have this somewhere in my deck, because it just interacts with everything. Literally interacts with everything. But it's even better in combo decks because the choke points are they're so variable from game to game that you get versatility in this card because it interacts with literally anything. So, like, if a certain game is about Zeus, you Judgment the Zeus. If a certain game is about the normal, you Judgment the normal. If it's about, Mystic Mine, you wait for Mystic Mine. Like, you just get to leverage the fact that this card interacts with every single card in the game for the most part. And you get to do it when, like, you have Shen, Caliga as your end board, and you only need to, like, protect your end board, interact with them. This card's just so good. It's so good. Please play it. Oh, I'm sorry about that. Fucking Michigan weather, right? But anyway, that is going to do it for my virtual deck profile for the November-December 2021 format. I really like this deck, this format. It's a ton of fun. If you know what you're doing with it, it's super rewarding. The games you brick, it sucks, but I think this deck, it's just, you get to solve a Rubik's Cube like every game when you play this deck. That's why I enjoy it so much. Anyway, like I said earlier, if you just want the list, it's going to be in the description of this video. Go ahead and check it out. Also, follow me on Twitter and add me on Facebook. The links will also be in the description. And thank you all so much for watching. My name is Nick from Team Nitro YGO, and I'll see y'all in the next video. Peace.